Hello, everyone, and welcome to Arts 1301. My name is Xavier Gar, and for those of you that are here, if you got questions, you're more than welcome to ask them during the lecture. If you're seeing this after it has been recorded, then feel free to email me if you have any questions on what we're discussing today. Now, this is the title of this section is called "What is Art?" Now, what is art is one of those questions that when they ask you, there really is no right or wrong answer, in the sense that what is art to you might not be art to somebody else, and what somebody else truly loves might be something that it's not your cup of tea. You don't particularly care for that particular kind of work. I guess if we're going to get technical, art is the process or product of deliberately and creatively arranging elements in a way that appeals to the senses or emotions. Art, above everything else, is supposed to make you feel something. So it's supposed to invoke some kind of emotion. It could be anger, it could be joy, it could be love, it could be indifference. It's supposed to make you feel something. Now, art, as I said, is all around you. If you look at the image here on this page, you have 3 pieces of art found in San Antonio. The first one, that big candle of La Virgen de Guadalupe, the Virgin Mary, is found at the Guadalupe Cultural Arts Center. And it is done by Jesse Trevino. The one at the center should be familiar to everybody. If you've been to downtown Market Square, I'm sure you have seen Jesse Trevino's Spirit of Healing. Same guy that made the candle is the same guy that made the Spirit of Healing, which you see at the Children's Hospital across from the Market Square. And of course, the last image on the right is a lot of people have nicknamed it Gumby because of its shape and color. Its real name is the Torch of Friendship. It is a gift that was given to the United States by Mexico. It is done by the artist Sebastian. The only condition on this gift was that it be displayed prominently, and it's an abstract rendition of a torch. You see the flame at the top, and it's supposed to represent our joint heritage of Mexico and San Antonio, which its shared history. Now, one of the things you might ask yourself is, well, where did art begin? Where did it start? If we're going to go back to the beginning, the earliest known type of art is what is called cave art, which you see here. Cave paintings were done on walls. Some date as far as 32,000 years ago. Now, the way these were done, they would take animal fats and animal oils, and they would mix them together with different plants to get different colors, greens or violets or yellows. The paints were applied by finger or using a stick. There were no brushes at the time. Now, we do not know exactly why they were done. Could be a form of record keeping, could be a way of recording history, could have religious implications. We don't really know, but we know that these are important. We know that these were important to the people that were making them because of the fact that they are so well preserved. The reason that they are well preserved is because not a lot of people got to see them. Probably the leaders, the artists that worked on it, but it wasn't something that was masses of people going in to see them, because if there was, they would not be as well preserved as they are in the image here. It's like if you've ever been to Carlsbad Caverns. The minute you walk in, the first thing they tell you is, don't touch nothing. They have one particular rock that they allow you to touch, and it's nasty, it's grimy, you can tell that, it's in rough shape. And the reason is because our bodies secrete a lot of oils, and these oils, dull and dilute, dirty, whatever we touch. You might say, well, it's just one person touching it. Well, one person times 10, 20, 30, 50, 60, 100 people a day, over 7 days a week, over 12 months a year, over a number of years. And it would, of course, do a lot of damage. Now, as I said, we don't know exactly why they were done, but they're important. Here you have those people hunting, mastodons, whatever animal they were hunting at the time. It's a pretty remarkable thing that they are as well preserved, like I said, that they are. But as I said, this is the first earliest type of art. Now, another question you might ask yourself is what is the purpose of art? Now, the purpose of art varies. Some art is done for utilitarian purposes. You know, it serves a purpose. It is used for something. It exists for this. Now, other type of art is different. It's symbolic. It represents an idea or a belief. For example, you look at these two images here. This first image, as cool as it looks, it's still a table. That is its basic function, to serve as a table. I tell people the comparison of if you go to a bar and you see where they keep all the wines, and it's a big, beautiful carved piece. It's got eagles, it's got all these beautiful animals on it, and it's amazing. But when it's all said and done, its main purpose is to hold the liquor. So that is utilitarian art. Now, this one, on the other hand, the one with the woman holding the child, this is meant to convey an idea, a belief. For example, anytime you see an image of a woman holding a child in art, a lot of times it is referred to as a Madonna. A Madonna, as I tell my students, is not just the name of a famous singer from the 80s. It is the term, the name that is used to describe any image that shows the Virgin Mary or a Virgin Mary-like character holding the Christ child or a Christ-like child. Now, you know that these images are divine in nature. How? Because the circles that go around their heads. Now, some people would like to call them halos, but technically that is not the term. The proper term is called mandorlas, and they are meant to differentiate them from everybody else. That there is a sense of divinity, something spiritual, something that makes them more than human. So remember, any image that shows the Virgin Mary in art, or a Virgin Mary-like figure holding the Christ child or a Christ-like child with the mandorlas, which you see here, it would be called the Madonna. Now, by contrast, and all this stuff, when you're hearing all this stuff, you might say, well, that's a lot of information. Don't freak out. This is this first one, what is art? It's an overview of what we will cover this semester. So this is just kind of like setting up the foundation for everything we will talk about. Now, this next image, same deal. It's the Virgin Mary or a Virgin Mary-like image holding the Christ child, the Christ as an adult or a Christ-like figure. But this is different. This is not called a Madonna, no, because this is the adult Christ. And he has passed on. He has already died. He had been taken down from the cross and is now dead. And this image is called a pietà, which literally means mercy. And it is done by Michelangelo Buonarroti. And we will talk about Michelangelo later on in the semester. Now, this piece, to let you know, it's an amazing piece. Proportionally, it's all wrong. The proportions are completely off, but all this is intentional. It is one of the most perfect pieces ever created. And everything, Michelangelo, everything he did had a purpose. Everything was carefully planned. And we will talk more about this when we cover Michelangelo later on in the semester. Now, now, what made what made art important? Keep in mind, art was not always seen the way it is viewed today. Sometimes today it is viewed as a form of expression, and sometimes artists are celebrated. Not always, but sometimes. We have today what sometimes can be termed as celebrity artists, and we will talk about celebrity artists that became famous while they were still alive, like Pablo Picasso, Salvador Dali, Diego Rivera, and we'll talk more about those guys later. But prior to all this, art was not really considered to be that important. I mean, a lot of times it was viewed as being just a skill. No more talent than a person that carves a bed. This would change, however, when the church would go on to become the biggest employer of artists. And that is what would put art on the map. the spread of religious beliefs. Every culture in the world has used art to spread their religious beliefs. It had been done, by Christians, Taoists, Buddhists, the Hindu, the Muslims, the Jewish people. They have all used in one form or another, painting, sculpture, architecture, different forms of art to express or to promote a spiritual belief. Now you might say, why would they do that? Well, because remember, at the time, people were illiterate. You might say, well, if you want to spread a certain belief, give everybody a Bible. No, but a Bible doesn't help spread your ideas or your beliefs if nobody can read. If people are illiterate, they cannot read the words. But if you tell the story in pictures and people learn these pictures, they memorize these pictures. That makes all the difference in the world. They'll memorize those pictures. They'll memorize the story that goes with them, and thus your idea spread. Here you have if you look at these images here, all of these halos or bandolas that are around their heads, the circles define them as being divine. They're divine in nature. Here you have Jesus being betrayed by Judas. Jesus has his mandorla. One of the disciples has his. Judas, who has betrayed Christ, no longer has a mandorla. Now, you might say, the way they did this, what they literally did to spread their beliefs using art, was they took cathedrals and churches and they literally turned them into giant picture books. People, like I said earlier, people would hear the story, see the images, remember it, and spread the word. And that is what basically put art on the map. And like I said earlier, at one point the church would be the biggest employer of artists. And they would make artists like Michelangelo Buonarroti and Leonardo da Vinci famous during the High Renaissance. Now let's talk about the different types of art. First of all, there is painting. Most basic way to explain what painting is you take paint and you put it on a surface. It could be a wall, it could be a canvas, it could be paper. You apply paint on something, you are painting. Here are three of the most famous paintings in the world. The first one is by Leonardo da Vinci, and it is the Mona Lisa. And one of the most famous paintings in the world, and I'm sure you've all heard the rumors, the stories, the Da Vinci Code, there's secret messages written, and put into her painting. That's just Hollywood. Some people say, nobody knows who she is. We know her name, Lisa del Giocondo. The mysterious smile, it's a nice smile, but it's just a smile. Those eyes that seem to follow you everywhere, that's a painter's trick that existed before Leonardo. So it's none of these things that you might have heard. Leonardo in a dress, it's not Leonardo in a dress that we know of. But one thing I will tell you, and I will tell you later on in the semester what makes her so special, but it's got nothing to do with her. The Mona Lisa is not what makes the painting so special. At the center, you see, from the Sistine Chapel, the creation of David. And we'll talk about that image when we talk about Michelangelo. Now, one thing about Michelangelo is in his work, nobody is ever weak. Everybody is strong. Everybody is powerful. Look at those muscles. And here we have Munch's The Scream. And we'll talk more about that later on during this PowerPoint. So a painting is considered to be two-dimensional. You see it from the front, you see it from the sides. You cannot see it from the back because it is hanging on a wall. So painting would be considered to be two-dimensional. Sculpture, on the other hand, would be three-dimensional. Three-dimensional means you can see it from the front, you can see it from the sides, and if you walk around, you can see it from the back. This could be made out of marble, wood, glass, metal. I mean, it can be made out of many different materials. You can do it by adding or subtracting from it. And here are three very famous sculptures. The Statue of Liberty, the symbol of American freedom. She's a foreigner, actually. She's an immigrant. She's French. She was brought over to America on boats in sections. And so it's a little bit of a lesson is that one of the greatest symbols of America is an immigrant. At the center is the discus thrower. This is Greek art. And we'll talk more about him when we meet again next week during this Zoom sessions, because we cover him when we cover Greek art. There's another one by Michelangelo, the David. And the thing about Michelangelo is he tricks you. His sculptures are tricky. You look at it, you might think this is a relaxed image that you're looking at. You might think that he's kind of relaxed, just a naked guy standing around, but no, this is not a peaceful sculpture. The image is not relaxed. If you really get a close look, it's a very tense sculpture. I mean, look at those eyes, they're looking upward. Look at those eyes, there's apprehension, there's tension. Look at that, the veins in the hand. This is not a peaceful, relaxed guy. This is a very tense sculpture. Something major is about to happen. Look at the look at the forehead, the creases on the forehead, the perking of the lips, the flaring of the nostrils. This is the biblical King David in one of the most epic scenes in his story. We'll talk about that when we talk about Michelangelo. Now, the term fine art is often used to describe something that shows us at our finest as human beings. When we create art that is amazing to look at, that you can scarcely believe that it was done by human hands. The Sphinx, the Last Supper, this is not the actual Last Supper. Leonardo's actual Last Supper is pretty deteriorated, but we will look more into this image when we talk about Leonardo. And the Eiffel Tower, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, but I'll give you a hint you might want to research on your own. The Eiffel Tower and the Statue of Liberty have something in common, and we'll discuss that later on in the semester. But if you want to get a preview of it, you can go online and type in and Google what do the Eiffel Tower and the Statue of Liberty have in common. Folk art is art that is done by just common everyday people. It is handed down from one generation to the next. And we'll talk about folk art later in the semester, masks that come from different regions around the world. A lot of them are actually just, they learn it from their, it's handed down from grandfather to grandmother to grandchildren and so on and so on and so on. Now, as far as the different type of art that is out there, and I know you might say, well, this is going so fast, don't worry. All of this will be covered in more detail once we cover all these topics in their particular Zoom lectures. Abstract art. Abstract art is fun because it's art that truly doesn't have to be about anything. It's like the Jerry Seinfeld show. It was a show that was about nothing, but people enjoyed it. It was fun. You know, it could be random shapes put together, the use of color, whatever it is supposed to make you feel something. It is supposed to invoke some kind of emotion from you. And if the only emotion it invokes is confusion, well, that counts too. Now, earth art was really big in the 60s and 70s, which happens to coincide with the hippie era. The idea behind earth art was you did not use brushes, you did not use any material that was produced by man. You used nature itself to produce art. This is called the spiral jetty. And you look here, it's literally a spiral. They use the soil to create it. Once you create your piece, you take photographs of it, you do recordings of it. Because the rule with earth art is nature has to be able to reclaim it. And of course, with this image, it looks really cool, but eventually the shore will come in and gradually Mother Nature will reclaim it. Cubism. Cubism was made famous by Pablo Picasso. Pablo Picasso is one of these celebrity artists that you hear the name and you know that he's famous. The image at the center, that's Pablo Picasso. This image here is not Pablo Picasso, but it's actually Diego Rivera. But the reason I include it is because, as I said, Pablo Picasso was a celebrity artist, became incredibly famous during his lifetime. And, everybody at one point wanted to be like Pablo Picasso. And every artist, from Diego Rivera to Salvador Dali, they all at one time or another tried to be like Picasso. You've heard the term, be like Mike, will be like Picasso. Now, this particular style, while Pablo Picasso is credited as having made it famous, he is not the original. He got the idea from somewhere else. Not a person, but a culture that did Cubism before Picasso. And what that culture is, we'll talk about it when we cover Pablo Picasso. Now, Expressionism. Expressionism is an art that tries to express certain feelings. If you look at this image here, it munches the scream, and you have this figure that is screaming, yelling. Everything around it is swirling, but the image itself is rather confusing. You don't really know what's going on. The person is screaming, but you can't really tell whether it's male or female. It seems rather androgynous. And if you look at it closely, you are so focused on this image that you fail to notice there are two figures advancing. Why is this person yelling or screaming? Maybe that person has reached a point where all they can do to express themselves is to just scream, yell, let it out. And we'll talk more about expressionism later on during the semester. Now, this is the type of art that everybody should be pretty familiar with. Pop art. The term pop art refers literally popular art. Art that is easily recognizable by anybody. You see, it uses images that we all are familiar with. Marilyn Diptych, Marilyn Monroe, Superman, a Campbell's tomato soup. Pop art is used in fine art, it's used in advertisement, and it's used in popular culture. What pop art does, it literally turns us into walking billboards where we celebrate the things that we know, that which we are familiar with. Under pop art would come the Jumpman logo, Michael Jordan, doing his famous jump. Any superhero symbol, from Superman to Batman to Wonder Woman to all these different characters, Spider-Man. I tell people, you could go to a third world country, you show up wearing a Superman shirt, and even they know who Superman is. Now, this next image is called, first of all, it is done by Salvador Dali, The Persistence of Memory. Now, surrealism is images that cannot exist in the real world. These are images that can only come from your mind. And in that sense, it is taking your dreams and making them real, or at least putting them on canvas or paper. Now, you might say, well, I've seen the melting clocks before. Thing is, those clocks are not really melting. And we will talk more about that when we talk about Salvador Dali, the meaning behind those clocks. On a bit of a side note, Salvador Dali made surrealism famous, but he did not create it. The real person that first created surrealism is the same person that painted the Mona Lisa. But we'll talk about that later on. So like I said, this is just an introduction, just to give everybody an overview of what you can expect in this class. And, even though you may say, well, we did a lot of information right now, but don't worry. All this will come together as we progress through the semester. Now, one thing I want to end it with, before we, one thing I want to end this particular presentation with is a question. Does one form of art influence another? What a lot of people don't realize is that artists, not just visual artists, I mean, when I use the word art, I'm talking about the visual arts. If I say the word art, arts, or artists, it encompasses anything dealing with the creative arts, music, dance, painting, drama. It's just art and arts. That one letter makes all the difference in the world. Now, this image, this drawings that you see here, were done by Leonardo da Vinci. Leonardo da Vinci, we're going to talk about, and we'll talk about all these images that you see here when we talk about his inventions. Now, Leonardo da Vinci believed that a person had the intellect to create a machine that would enable them to fly. And these are sketches for his flying machine, which we will talk more about later. Now, this sketches were in a traveling exhibit, and they were seen by a young cartoonist named Bob Kane. And these images stayed in his head. Now, this young cartoonist also liked to watch movies. And two of his most famous movies, the ones that he loved to watch, were The Mark of Zorro with Tyrone Power and The Bad Whispers. Now, you all know the story of Zorro. He's Don Diego de la Vega. He pretends to be a wimp, so no one will suspect that he is secretly Zorro. And he lives in a hacienda, but underneath that hacienda is a cave. He goes down to the cave, puts on his dark costume, gets on his black horse, and rides out to fight against crime and injustice. And The Bad Whispers was the story of a man who dressed like a bat and would go around killing people. And they were trying to solve the mystery and catch him. Now, Bob Kane took the sketches by Leonardo da Vinci, my bad. And he took also the movies that I mentioned, and he used them to create the Batman. And if you look at the image, you can see that he borrowed Leonardo's wing design. Now, the thing about this is that this is what I mean when I say artists borrow from each other. And gradually, they take things that they see or are exposed to in other arts and use them to create something that is new. And that is how we ended up getting the character of the Batman. And that's what I mean when I say the arts all borrow from each other. Now, every great hero must have a great villain. And that is where we meet Conrad Veidt, silent film actor, known for playing homicidal maniacs. He just had that crazy man look. Now, one of the roles that he played was from a movie called The Man Who Laughs. And in that movie, Conrad Veidt looked like this. And he would be the inspiration for the Joker. Movies led to a cartoonist taking this particular look and then combining it with the fact that for some reason some people have an irrational fear of clowns. So he made his hair green, his face white, his lips red, and called him the Joker. And that is what I mean when I say art borrows from each other. Artists will be inspired by musicians. Musicians will inspire an artist. A movie will inspire a songwriter, and so forth and so forth and so forth. And they all borrow, be it literature, be it the visual arts, they all borrow from each other. That's it for this particular section. Next week, we will be covering Greek art, and we will also be covering Egyptian art. And look forward to seeing you all. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me. Thank you.